Hello, welcome back to Shock's Talks. I'm Shakti, and we're in season 2, the psychic season, but I want to give a quick UFO UAP update today because there's a little bit of a buzz going on about something that was released by Christopher Mellon, and so we're going to talk about that, talk about a sighting. But first, I just want to remind everyone I will be a part of a cool UFO art show coming up on May 3rd, Santa Fe, New Mexico, Phil Space Gallery. I'm really excited for this. I already dropped off my painting, and while I was there, this artist, R. Sanders, I actually don't remember his first name, but he does these cool prints, these old school, like UFO prints that he takes to different events and sells, and he signed two for me, and I just think this is like why I'm doing this, because there's going to be so many cool people that I meet through this event, so I'm excited for that. Okay, let's get into it. So Christopher Mellon, former Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for Intelligence, former Minority Staff Director, Senate Select Committee on Intelligence. He is in the UFO community. He does a lot of interviews, articles. He has a Substack, and he posted this article about a communication that was finally allowed to be made public. So he says in his Substack, which I linked for you below, my purpose in releasing this document in the wake of the government's blanket denials regarding the possession of off-world technology is simply to help others understand why I, and some others, consider these allegations worthy of investigation. And then Richard Dolan, who I always love to talk about and listen to, did this long video and interview, and he kind of breaks down this whole thing. So let me find this clip I want to play. Where are we at?
I don't know. I mean, we'll have to really get a detailed view of this. But on his Substack, he talked about just wanting to counter some narratives that have been put out by the U.S. government. And he got permission from the individual that he had this exchange. This is from Signal, from circa 2020, as he writes here in the corner. And in fact, went through the process of making sure that this was properly a non-classified or declassified message. He actually went through proper channels. The Signal correspondence itself is not classified, and so therefore he was within his rights to publish this. And again, he did get permission from this individual who is unnamed. And this is a conversation that apparently took place 4 years ago. So I'll just read it, and it goes back and forth. So this individual writes to Chris Mellon. He says, blanked and I are making huge progress getting into the CR, that is Crash Retrieval program. He plans to meet with you at some point. Chris writes back, he says, the blank would be slack-jawed if they find out what, oh, I'm sorry, that person continued to say, the so-and-so would be slack-jawed to find out what we now know. Mellon's reply is fully redacted. And then this person writes again, right now, we haven't gone that far back. So apparently the question had to do with maybe Roswell, just guessing here. But the person says, we're dealing with the recovered UAP that landed in Kingman, Arizona in the 50s.
Okay, so I'm looking at a screenshot of this message. You can see it on Christopher K. Mellon's Twitter account, or X. And also on his Substack, which I've linked below, is the full article with the screenshot of that conversation and a little more information that I cut us off from. But here's a quote from his article. As you can see, this senior government official claimed they were being granted access to an alleged U.S. alien technology recovery and exploitation program. I won't comment on the organization they worked for, but I can confirm the individual had plausible access and was high-ranking. considerably more so than whistleblower David Grush, who we've heard about in the recent, well, last summer's congressional UAP hearing. As you can see, this individual claimed to be gaining deep insights into the program and even provided the name of the alleged Air Force gatekeeper for this alleged secret realm. I've shared an unredacted copy of this message with some staff and members of the various congressional oversight committees. To the best of my knowledge, none have elected to contact the alleged USAF gatekeeper to check the veracity of this claim, which is so annoying. It's like people get this information and they're just like, well, I don't know. It's like, come on, guys. So yeah, this is the reason I just think this is exciting is because this is nothing new. This incident, there's a whole book about it, and I'm going to tell you all about what happened in Kingman, Arizona. But basically, it's helpful for me to just remember and just to be reminded over and over and over again that like there's so much information out there about these crash retrievals and that this has been going on for so long. And, Roswell was in the 40s, this incident was in the 50s, but, it's been a while since then. So thinking about everything that has been done and has been ongoing and just how crazy it is that the lies and the cover-ups are still going strong and we're all still fighting for transparency but not really getting it, and we're kind of reaching this really critical moment right now because, as you'll hear in this other short clip that I'm going to play, this guy Michael Stratt, who Dolan is interviewing on this episode, just talks about how like a lot of these people who had the firsthand knowledge, like they're not even going to be around for a lot longer. So we really have to stay alert and keep doing this work. I mean, I'm not really doing anything. I'm just listening to other people who are researching this stuff, and I'm repeating a lot of their stories, not because I'm trying to take credit for anyone else's work. I'm no researcher on the level that they're at, but I'm trying to help myself learn and remember these facts by repeating it back to myself and to you, just so that I can help myself think about it, because the information is so wild and out there and so different from what we think about in our daily lives that it's easy for it to just slip through the cracks of my mind. So I kind of have to use repetition as a tool for really wrapping my mind around this whole issue and just how mind-blowing it really is. And yeah, so that's what I'm doing here. Anyway, here's another quote from the Substack article by Christopher Mellon. It is important to stress that regardless of the alleged technology recovery issue, the UAP topic is one that requires serious, continued congressional and executive branch attention. In just the last few years alone, over 1,000 military UAP reports have been recorded. In just the last few years alone, and we're in 2024 right now. This is in addition to a wider pattern of mysterious and disruptive drone overflights over U.S. bases and warships. So, separate from all the drone stuff, over 1,000 military UAP reports have been recorded. That's pretty fascinating. That's a lot, you guys. That's a lot. With such extraordinary demonstrated vulnerabilities, far more serious than a mere Chinese balloon, there is an urgent need for our government to aggressively investigate incursions of restricted military airspace, regardless of the truth of any allegations about recovered off-world technology. So this is kind of like the main message that came out of those hearings last summer, is just, this is a safety issue. This is a real thing. Let's not even worry about what it is. Take the word alien out of it if you have to. Take whatever else out of it. But what is going on? We need to look at it. And why are people being so secretive? I mean, it's obvious. It's a cover up. But anyway, here is, let's see, 2218. Let me find it. This little clip about these people aging?
It's important at this point that we identify the legacy crash retrieval witnesses because they're passing away. We're beyond racing the Undertaker. It is the final curtain call on disclosure regarding these crash retrieval operations. Because if we fail to track down the legacy witnesses, then we can't get to their supervisors, and their supervisors can't get us to the areas that have the debris, the bodies, and the craft. And that's why it's imperative that we do this.
Mm-hmm.
The debris, the bodies, and the craft. Also, this episode, this Richard Dolan episode, is in the links below. So if you have the time and you're interested, go listen to the whole thing, watch it. There's a lot of cool visuals. I'm going to give you a synopsis of what this episode contains for those that don't have time to go back and watch the whole thing, which is like an hour-ish or more. Here's what they talk about. The Kingman incident, 1953, Kingman, Arizona. So Harry Drew is the man who wrote a whole book about this. And that book is called 7 Days in May, The Kingman UFO Story by Harry Drew. Apparently he's passed away now. So this guy, Michael Schratt, is retelling the story from this book, and he's sharing a lot of visuals on this episode with Richard Dolan. And this is the issue that they kind of they talked about this time, this moment in time in that message that Christopher Mellon was posting about earlier. So 1953, Harry Drew is the principal investigator, and this was not a crash, but a forced landing. So the craft was in perfect working order when it landed in the dirt. And what was going on here in Arizona was basically the Air Force had closed this base, and it was just a place where they were, it was a repository for World War II aircraft. So it was like just an airfield of all these like old aircraft that were no longer in use. And at one point in time, which this started in 1952, Russia was creating a new bomber, and the US Air Force was trying to learn how to track that craft, the bomber, by extending their radar range. So this was an experiment in high-powered radars that was going on in this area in Arizona. And they show a map in this video. It's like a triangulated area where these radars are doing their thing. And the UFO flies into this range, and then it comes down just south of the triangle. The craft was 30 feet in diameter. It's a classic saucer shape. It's like round with like kind of a bubble on the top and bottom, and it goes all the way around. 14-foot height, and it had little ridges or slots all around, the edge, the outer edge. And it had a hatch door at the bottom that opened. And that hatch was about 3.5 feet high and 1.5 feet wide. And the whole thing had the look of like a brushed aluminum exterior. And when this thing came down, 4 humanoid-looking beings were taken alive by the military. So this is the story, based on this guy Harry Drew, who did the investigation around this. So when this crash happened, 40 engineers and scientists gather in Phoenix, and they all get on this bus and they drive up to Kingman, and they arrive on the scene. It's late at night. Everything is dark. There's military all around. There's a tent out there, and they have the high-intensity light-all devices, which you hear about in a lot of crash retrieval stories. They're basically just giant, powerful lights. So there's 2 of those shining on the craft. And let's see. So the craft had come down at about a 20-degree angle, and it was buried about 20 inches into the soil. Actually, it looks just like this. This is the style craft, other than like it would have a hatch on it. So that's kind of the picture that you see in the artwork from the book. It's very similar shape, little ridges all around the edges. It ends up kind of getting buried only 20 inches into the soil because it's crashing at an angle, but it came down because of the radar. And then there are medical personnel who are trying to enter the craft, but every time they start to go in, they get really disoriented and they're not feeling well. And so I don't know what's going on there, but they can't really stay inside of it. Sometimes when you hear about these things, it's like a radiation issue. Maybe it was like a little radiation poisoning. I don't know. They don't go into those details here. Maybe they do in the book. I haven't read that book, 7 Days in May. So they get this thing onto an M25 tank transporter, which, if you can imagine, like a big truck with like a long bed that has to transport tanks, it's huge. So this thing is kind of balancing or like set up on the back of this giant truck thing that is going through the desert. And then they have to get it across the Colorado River. So they roll the whole transporter onto a barge, and then they're trying to use cables to pull it across. But one of the cables snaps, and then it's this huge uproar, and everyone's screaming and freaking out. And basically, they get more cables attached, and they're able to pull it where they need to. But before that happens, there was an impact with the north wall of the Hoover Dam, according to this investigator. So in the video, Strat is saying, like, maybe we could go and find the evidence of that impact still. Like, maybe there's evidence of that, which is interesting to think about. So that's the story of what happened there. And who knows where it was taken and where those actual humanoid-like beings were taken. But this is just one of so many of these stories that I guess it just gets me all fired up because I feel like it's so bizarre to me that all of this is so kept away from the public, and that we can't have an honest, scientific, open, and clear ongoing discussion about these things. And every time the government or any agency creates a group who claims to be doing just that, they just fail us, and they miss the mark, and they tell us more lies, and they just continue to act like nothing's going on when there's just an overwhelming amount of evidence. So I did say that this was going to be the psychic season, and I am going to continue to focus on remote viewing and the nature of reality and other psi phenomena, but I wanted to take a break and just talk about UFOs again because it's just so interesting. And I'm also having a really fun time. Last time we talked a little bit about the arts and how, ideas can be pulled from the collective psyche simultaneously, and different people can bring that idea into fruition. And I'm having a really interesting experience right now because I'm watching The Three Body Problem on Netflix, and I read the first book. It was pretty difficult, to be honest, for me to grasp the book when I was reading it, although I did find it really interesting. And I got the second book but haven't started it. The show is really fun, kind of silly in ways, just with like the hot scientists and all of their relationships and the little drama that goes on between them, the characters. But there's a lot of cool, it's speculative fiction, and it really deals a lot with a lot of the themes that have come out of the UFO community and the discussion at large. You have the different ways that people feel about even just the idea of visitors from another place. You have the sort of religious aspect of people who kind of organize in a very cult-like way around the phenomena, who are basically feeling like, I guess it's the human nature to kind of align with power. And if there's a powerful other that's coming here, and we already feel like things are in pretty horrible conditions on Earth, and we want to align with this potentially greater force and higher power. And so people get really religious and weird about that. And you see all those things in the UFO community. So I do recommend that show. Very interesting. I have 2 more episodes to get through before this season is over. It is a little bit gory, so if you don't like gore, maybe don't watch it. But that's all I've got today. Just a really quick update. I still have other exciting things coming up in the future. I'll tell you about that later. I'm really grateful for everyone who's listening. I sometimes wonder why I'm even doing this, and I get really overwhelmed and intimidated because there's so many highly professional YouTube content creators out there with great equipment and great editing and great content. And sometimes, I look at all that and I just think, why am I even doing this? Why am I making this janky little channel in the corner of my side room? But I really enjoy it, and it kind of keeps me interested in the topic and thinking about it. And like I said, repeating things to myself for the purpose of learning and understanding and keeping myself out of the cognitive dissonant place that allows us to completely ignore things that are happening, that are important, that could impact the entire planet. So that's why I'm here. Why are you here? Let me know. Let me know in the comments, please. And if you like the video, like it. If you want to get more videos, subscribe. If you want to know when I post, hit the bell. And I don't know, I'll just keep doing it until I don't feel like it anymore. Thanks again for your support, and I'll see you next time on Shocks Talks.